Welcome to the Brown County Hour.
Coming to you from the legendary Hills of Brown,
where the plum purple haze,
the one nature herself drapes over the hills and hollers,
inspires local characters, artists, and nature lovers.
It's as though the hills themselves conspire to create a beauty and culture in the heart of Indiana.
Sit for a spell and hear the music.
Tall tales,
true stories,
and current goings-on.
Brought to you by folks who still know how to sit by a fire in winter
and swim buck naked in summer. Welcome to episode 64 of the Brown County Hour. This is Dave Seastrom
and Carrie Ray, along with the rest of the crew. Our musical guest this month is Lou Stant. We'll share our interview and listen to some of his original music.
We have a conversation with Jim Connor about mushrooms, and we have an interview with Laura Edmonds from the IN Raptor Center. John Boyer shares his version of This Old Guitar, and we'll listen to a poem from Nancy Chen Long.
We also have another piece from Mike Bubie, and Dave Seastrom shares an essay about trash.
We begin this show with our interview with this month's musical guest, Lou Stant. Jim Connor shares his thoughts about local mushrooms, and we'll close this segment with Lou Stant's tune, A Rambler's Soul, from his album of the same name.
So we have the pleasure of sitting here in the studio with Lou Stant, and I actually just interviewed him about his new book. But first, I'd like to say welcome, Lou, and it's a pleasure to have you here.
Yes.
And so we were also talking about what we wanted to cover in talking to someone who's been making music as long and in so many ways. And one of the things I know you said that you'd like to talk about is your writing process.
Well, to keep it simple, I think that there are some people who start with lyrics and there are some people who start with music. And due to my love affair with the guitar, I've always started with the music. I'll be sitting there fiddling with the guitar and some marvelous thing will come out of it. And I'll build on that. And then there's something about the tenor of the music that suggests the lyric to me. Mm-hmm. It's not just the music, it's whatever I'm thinking at the time, whatever I'm feeling at the time, what I might be reading in the newspaper, what I may have just seen in a film somewhere.
Do you think that, to dissect that just a little bit further, I often wonder when you're playing something on the guitar and noodling around or whatever you're doing, and something comes for you, do you feel like it starts more from like an emotional or a feeling level, like the music makes you feel a certain way, or do you think it's more of a direct path from the music to an actual lyric or idea, like a conceptual thing?
I would say it's both. I think it happens both ways. There's definitely an emotional component to it for me, or maybe in some circumstances a relative lack of emotion. Whatever it is tends to suggest the lyric. There's a mystery to me to that whole process of words.
Well, you obviously, like I said, we just interviewed you about a book that you've written, and you also referenced multiple other books you've written. So you don't just have a love affair with the instrument and the music. You obviously are a lover of prose and of words and poetry as well.
Storytelling.
And storytelling,
yes.
right, which where that line crosses over from songwriter to storyteller to musician. And it seems like you're another sort of Renaissance type of person for where all those lines kind of blurred.
I guess you could say I am. I've always loved storytelling, and I think what happened with me with songwriting is that I reached a certain point where I don't know if I even felt it consciously, but I knew that I wanted to develop these characters a little more. And it's really more that confluence between the music and the words in that case. But Writing fiction is more a process of taking the character and running with it,
Well,
and being able to develop it a bit more.
Don't you think all that juice comes from the same place?
I do, and I think that's where the mystery comes in. I will sit down sometimes to write a song or write fiction or whatever, and things just kind of spill out of me. They just come. I've never had this.
No writer's block.
I've never experienced that. Now, I have found over the years that the songs they don't come as easily as they used to, and I don't know if that's related to aging or what it is. I just find that I have to work on a song more to get it where I want it. That's a real convenient scapegoat, and I try not to indulge in that too much.
Sure.
The mystery to me of it all is that I always have this feeling like I'm pulling something out of the air, like it's kind of ultimately a gift. There's something about it that might not come exclusively from me. I tend to be hesitant, at least inwardly, to ascribe my own authorship exclusively to any piece of work.
Sure.
Because it feels often like, I'm writing, and it's like someone's whispering it in my ear and I'm writing it out or something.
Sure.
It's all a kind of mysterious process. But yeah, I find that writing songs and fiction is by and large giving into mystery, just letting it unfold.
It sounds like the guitar was love at first sight, or, sound maybe.
Well, I first started playing the guitar in, I think it was 1966. I was at Boy Scout camp in Korea. That's another story.
I was going to say, we'll have to have you back.
There was some guys at that Boy Scout camp that had these guitars, and, I was kind of sitting there watching them, and I think after a while they got the impression that I really wanted a piece of that. And so they, gave me the guitars and showed me a few chords, and by the time the Boy Scout camp was over, I was playing Gloria.
That's great.
I think it was the Van Morrison version at that time. I'm not sure. But when we moved back to the States from living overseas, I begged my mother to get me a guitar, and she did. At first, she insisted that I have lessons, and I failed miserably on the lessons. I've never been able to knuckle under to someone else's instruction very easily. When I was learning piano, they would put this piece of music in front of me, and I would learn the music, and then I'd throw the music away and play it how I wanted to play it, and I drove everyone crazy doing that. And so I knew that I had to kind of follow my own path, my own muse, so to speak, which is what I wound up doing, and that just led me down kind of a circuitous path. I started writing songs in 1972, and it was probably toward the late 70s when I had the first songs that I thought were worth recording, that were good enough, I guess, I felt. And I had already started experimenting with alternate tunings by then. Probably Joni Mitchell was the greatest teacher of all of the musicians. At first, I would listen to her records and I would try and figure out how she was doing the tunings. But then there was this thing that happened. It was a magazine. It was a guitar magazine, and it was an interview with Joni Mitchell in which she actually revealed like 20 or 30 of the major tunings she'd used. This was like a gold mine to me, and so I started fiddling around with these tunings, and probably 30, 40 songs came out of that.
You still do that?
Yes, I still use
when you're
those
playing?
tunings. I also write in standard tuning, but I use those as well.
So are you currently gigging locally or regionally? Are there places folks can come see you and buy your book and hear your songs and so on?
I have a website that has a performance schedule, and so all of the performances that I will be having will be listed in the bio section of that website. The website is loustant.net.
LouStant.net. Well, Lou, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. I wish we had another, couple hours just to sit around and chat. We'll have to do that sometime.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Hey there, folks. It's Carrie with the Brown County Hour, and I'm sitting here with Brown County's own Jim Connor. He's a good friend of mine, and I wanted to bring him in because he's a bit of a mushroom guru around here. And I don't mean, like, I know there's lots of folks people know around town that are, oh, this is the morel guy, and he knows where to find them, and this is the guy who knows chanterelles. But my experience, having known Jim for a while, is that he's kind of an all-around, like, knows a ton about mushrooms. He's one of the few guys that I know that is out hunting for mushrooms year-round here in Brown County and using them for all kinds of things. So, Jim, tell us a little bit about mushrooms in your life.
I guess mushrooms in my life started at an early age because my father and an old Polish immigrant woman who lived in our town I would go foraging with. And my father was mostly for asparagus and things that we'd find along the railroad tracks and wild horseradish. But this old Polish lady knew mushrooms. That was her thing was mushrooms. And so when I was a little boy, she used to take me out through the woods and through the farm fields and stuff to hunt mushrooms. So I learned at an early age a lot of the regular mushrooms that you can eat, the puffballs and the pink bottoms, and they were where I grew up there was more farm pasture land than there was hardwoods. And so I learned a lot of the pasture mushrooms from her. And we did have a few, forested areas that we'd look for mushrooms, but she was the one that was really instrumental in teaching me about mushrooms when I was really little.
Sure.
And it's always been something that's fascinated me.
Yeah. So would you say that once moving to Brown County, there was sort of a resurgence of that interest and activity for you? Or?
Oh, yeah. It was like a whole new smorgasbord. I mean, because of all the hardwoods, there was all these other new mushrooms to explore and to learn, And the Brown County is abundant in different types of mushrooms.
Yeah. Now, I didn't misspeak when I said you virtually hunt and find edible mushrooms year-round.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, you can find them. I mean, outside of the dead of, winter, but last year I found some in December and January because it was warm, oyster mushrooms that were still, a little faded, but not beyond edibility.
Yeah. Now, do you have a favorite?
My favorite is the matakis, and which they go by the name of sheepheads, or some people call them hen of the woods. There's lots of different names. I don't go by the scientific names of mushrooms. It's
more the colloquial.
I use the hillbilly term for mushrooms, and they're easier to remember that way.
Well, a lot of times the name, not always, but a lot of times the names sort of are indicative of maybe what they look like,
right.
What shape
right,
they are.
Exactly, and that's how they're, and that's our. I mean, that's
sure.
As the good ones. I mean, a sheep's head mushroom kind of from a distance could look like a sheep's head.
Exactly.
And
those hillbillies knew what they were talking about.
Exactly. And the ones that are not good, like the destroying angel or the angel of death, they call, is a white, usually single growing amanita that will kill you, And so when you see that angel, it's like, that's the angel of death, and don't even go near it.
Which that's probably another thing we should say too. I mean, obviously we're sort of celebrating the fact that you can find this food in the forest, but I'm sure you'd be the first person to say know what you're doing.
Right.
Like do your homework.
Right.
And know how to identify and don't take risks.
Right.
Because there literally are. There's a lot more mushrooms that'll make you sick than will kill you, but there are ones that will kill you.
Right. And there's a saying, when you're gathering mushrooms, it's like, when in doubt, throw it out. Like don't ever don't ever take a chance on it.
Yeah.
And also if you get familiar with a mushroom, you can have an allergy to a mushroom. It's just like people have an allergy to shrimp or fish. It might be a particular mother. So if you're gathering, you're like, oh boy, I've identified these mushrooms and I'm going to make a big meal. When it comes to mushrooms, you always eat them for the first time in very small amounts, just to make sure you don't have an allergic reaction. Yeah. And some mushrooms are easier to ID. There's no other mushrooms that look like them, that are harmful. And there are mushrooms that look similar, like jack-o'-lanterns and chanterelles are similar looking, unless you really...
you got to know the identifying
marks, and you look at. But once you find that, then once you're confident in it, it's good.
Yeah.
But back to the maitake. The maitake is...
Back to your favorite.
Back to my favorite mushroom. No, the maitake is probably my favorite as far as eating. Yeah. And it's also one of the top medicinal, anti-inflammatory. They're doing lots of cancer research with maitakes now. And
Sure. Well, now, speaking of that, besides the edibility of these mushrooms, I know there are some that you hunt that aren't necessarily edible, but that you go ahead and collect and ingest, I guess, in a form for medicinal purposes. I think a specific turkey tail is one. So tell us a little bit about that.
Turkey tails grow abundantly here in Brown County on dead wood. And there's 3 or 4 different types of turkey tails, but there's one that is specifically used for medicine, and it's been used in Asian medicine for thousands and thousands of years. And that one it's not an edible mushroom, but you can make a tea or tinctures out of it, where you can either soak them in alcohol and draw the medicinal properties out, or I like to use them in I put them in boiling water or crock pot for a day and let them slow cook, and then take the tea off of it and bottle.
And then you drink that?
Yeah, and you drink it, and it tastes. It's good. It's not bad. I mean, it's not unlike iced tea.
Well, before we wrap up here, thanks so much. This is great information. I think our audience will really enjoy this. So you like maitakes. Tell us your favorite way to prepare your favorite mushroom before we sign off here.
Oh boy, favorite. I don't know if I have a favorite. I mean, the maitakes are like a very meaty mushroom, and they're almost like if you bread them and fry them or something, you would think you're eating a pork chop or a piece of chicken. They have a very meaty flavor to them, but I like them in all different,
Yeah, well, it is your favorite, I suppose.
It's my favorite.
Yeah,
yeah.
you'd probably pick it up and eat it raw if you had to.
Well, and that is one of the only. The one thing about the maitake is one of the only mushrooms that you can pick and eat raw. Most all other mushrooms should be cooked before ingesting. There's a few of them, but maitakes you can eat raw. There's no problem. There you go.
There you go. Everybody, Jim Connor, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Kissed my wife while she was sleeping. Oh, so softly I left a note on the table saying I'd be back come springtime, and I slipped out the door ever so quietly, but through an upstairs window 3 pairs of eyes watched me, and now I'm shuffling down the road with a heart so heavy, just trying to forget those eyes still upon me. Oh, the heart of a father can be a hobo's bane. With his body unfettered, he can wander in chains, and a rambler's soul spins out of control till his heart sets him free again. Well, I rode the rails southward, bound for Carolina, but it might as well have been a slow boat to China. Next night I dreamed I was in a tumble-down building full of lovesick little orphans. And as I was leaving through an upstairs window, I saw the faces of my children. I hitched a ride, and with any luck I'll roll in by the morning. Oh, the heart of a father can be a his body unfettered, he can wander in chains, and a rambler's soul spins out of control till his heart sets him free again. A rambler's soul spins out of control till his heart brings him home.
Now we pause for station identification.
You are listening to the Brown County Hour on volunteer-powered community radio, WFHB, at 100.7 in Brown County, 91.3 and 98.1 in Bloomington, 106.3 in Ellettsville, and online at WFHB.org.
Support for the Brown County Hour comes from the Indiana State Fingerstyle Guitar Festival at the Brown County Playhouse, featuring award-winning acoustic guitarists from all over the world on July 28th and 29th. Tickets and information available at indianastringfest.com.
We have an interview with Laura Edmonds from the Indiana Raptor Center. John Boyer shares his This Old Guitar story, and we'll close with Lou Stant's song, Old Hedgerow, from his album, Enough About Me.
It's my pleasure to introduce Laura Edmonds, and she is here this evening representing the Indiana Raptor Center, and she's brought with her an American Kestrel named Simon.
Indeed.
If we're lucky, we'll get to hear Simon. He's been kind of vocal early on and occasionally flaps his wings. Well, Laura, please tell us about the Indiana Raptor Center, what you guys do, and where you're located.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me in. It's this place has quite a reputation, and it's with real pride that we're here today. We take in injured and orphan birds of prey, which include hawks, owls, falcons, kites, vultures. There's only a few kites in Indiana, but indeed, every now and then we get one. We take them in, do what we can. We have a very fine veterinary clinic that we work with that do the surgeries and the x-rays and that sort of thing. And then we try to get them back in the sky where they belong. These birds are what we call apex predators, meaning that whatever bad things are trending in their population is eventually going to trend in our population as humans. And it makes them a really important set of birds to monitor their health.
So how many permanent residents are at your center right now?
We have, let's see, today I counted, and there's 26.
26, and these are all birds that for one reason or another cannot be released into the wild. Is that correct?
With little exception, there's a couple of birds that are there on a falconry license, because I'm also a master falconer. And we have a couple of exotics. One is from Africa, and the other one is a European bird. And those birds are very healthy, but they were both raised in captivity for the purpose of education.
Well, how do you guys get your money? I know that you have events that you sponsor. Do you charge admission for some of this?
There's only one event that we charge admission for, and that's our Raptor Rendezvous that we have each year. This year it's in September. But the rest of it is all donations and grants, and it really is by the grace of the public that we exist. There's no paid staff, but we have a pool of about 60 volunteers that are all trained to help us out, and we do about 170 patients a year. We do about 100 programs and about 60 tours of the facility.
Wow. Where is your location? Where are you guys?
We're up about a mile and a half northwest of town. It's up Jackson Branch Ridge.
So I assume you have a Facebook page, perhaps? Or
we do. Indiana Raptor Center is what it is.
That's your Facebook page. And then your website?
Is indianaraptorcenter.org.
Our conversation, you mentioned that they're going to have a few evening events, and one of them is coming up on July 3rd.
Yes, sir.
Now, what's the difference between an evening event and a daytime event?
The afternoon events, which are generally on Saturdays at the Nature Center, and we do a lecture that day that usually has a theme. But we have fewer birds, and it's free.
When you say the Nature Center, you're talking about at the Brown County State Park?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
All right.
And the ones that the evening events start at 7:30, and they're at the lodge. And there's no charge for those either, but those tend to be a little bit longer and a little more, we put on the dog a little bit.
I see.
To
or
to
put on the
shows.
bird, as you might
Put
say.
on the bird, yes, sir.
Well, Simon is absolutely beautiful, and as you said, he's an American Kestrel.
Yes, sir.
And he can't be released for kind of an interesting reason. You want to talk about that for a little bit?
Yes, sir. It's a common problem, and about half of our resident birds are residents because of this, but good-hearted people will sometimes pick these little guys up when they're chicks. And in the raptor world and with waterfowl, whatever is feeding those birds when their eyes are clearing up is going to become their self-image. And so they can go out into the wild and they can survive and hunt and do all these things, but when it comes time for mating, they're going to pick a human. Now, with Simon, who only weighs about 4 ounces, it's not that big of a problem. But if you have a great horned owl or a red-tailed hawk that's sweet on you, it gets to be a problem with you and your friends, whoever's getting in the car with you.
Who knew this could happen? I mean,
it does happen, and somebody is going to get hurt, whether it's the bird or the person. So it's illegal to release birds that have been identified with that psychological problem.
That's amazing. Now, that's called imprinting?
Malimprinting. What it is we're all here in the room, we're all imprinted on humans, except for me. I was raised by wolves. But, we're all imprinted on people or humans, but when it goes wrong and something else raises them, it's called malimprinting.
Wow. So Simon will be a permanent resident then at your facility?
Yes, sir.
Are there other kestrels that he'll be able to hang out with?
There are. They come and go with various reasons, but he doesn't really have a hankering to do that. They make wonderful education birds, these malimprinted creatures, but it's really quite sad that those things have happened to them, that they can't go into nature. But he has no desire to go out into nature. There's nothing he likes better than being in a room full of people. I mean, look at him now. He's just so engaged and preens and very personable.
Yeah, he seems completely content. So you referred to him as a cavity dweller, is that right?
He sure is.
And what does that mean?
That means that he nests in a hole, basically, and he's a secondary cavity nester, meaning that he resides or has his young in a hole that's already there. He doesn't make the hole like a woodpecker does.
I see.
In fact, one of this guy's best friends is the big old pileated woodpecker, because those guys make their hole. And so after those guys abandon that hole, boy, they zing in on them, and they got this nice 3-bedroom apartment to move into that the woodpecker has made. And so when we do our programs about kestrels, we generally bring along a log that has a hole in it that was made by a woodpecker.
Well, I was
so
going to
that
ask.
People can see how cool it is that there's that relationship exists.
Well, I was going to ask, so the hole you're referring to is not in the ground, it's actually in a tree itself.
Yes, sir.
And in order for these fellows to survive, they have to have an extended forest. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. Now, one thing that is kind of nice about them is that they and the screech owl take very readily to man-made boxes. And that is probably going to be their saving grace. Because depending on where you locate the box, they readily take a man-made box. These guys, you're more likely going to do well by mounting the box on the side of a tall barn or a tree that's in the middle of a field, where for a screech owl, you can get them very easily light woods. So if you have a pair of screech owls and a pair of kestrels on your property and you have a farm, you can really save a lot of money, because as we sit here today, about 20% of our crops are lost to pests, things like mice and rats and stuff like that. Mouse, for example, does about $25 worth of damage to a farm in a year's time. A pair of mice left unchecked over a year becomes 65,000 mice.
Oh, my God.
Now, the male, over a day's time, is called upon sometimes to catch 7 mice, because they have 5 babies at once, so he's got to feed himself, the 5 kids, and his mate. So you're thinking 7 mice a day. Then the screech owl comes out at night, and she's doing the same thing. She's taking as many mice they have as 5 young also. So that's a significant savings if you can put up a couple of boxes for these guys and then maybe leave the tallest tree in your tree line for the red-tailed hawk and the great horned owl to have their nests. They do significant catching of rodents. Like the red-tailed hawk will catch as many as 500 rats in a season to feed their young.
Well, Laura, it's so wonderful to hear about this work and to meet you and your friend Simon, the American Kestrel.
Right.
Yeah, do you have specific hours that people can come, or are you open every day? Or?
Actually, we're open for appointments Tuesday through Sunday. You might want to call about a week or so before you want to come so we can schedule you in. We love to schedule people right around feeding time, which is between 3 and 4 in the afternoon, because they're so active and they know what's happening. They get very vocal. But it's 11 to 5 Tuesday through Sunday.
Yeah, for scheduling. What is your telephone number?
Our number is 812-988-8255. 8990.
Again, thank you, Laura Edmonds, for coming in and sharing this information about the Indiana Raptor Center and introducing us to this wonderful American Kestrel, Simon.
Thank you for having us in.
Simon, do you have anything to say?
You want to say something here?
I take exception to what you've said. Are you one of those John Does that we dread? Just take a number and have a seat, or else hit the street. 'Cause there's no shortcut, there's no bypass, so curb your tongue and plant your ass.
It's all right here in Regulation 15, subset D-7A, paragraph 4.
I rather resent your assertion that I'm some kind of soulless person, some rule-waving bureaucrat, pencil-pushing, icy old fart without a heart. I may seem cold, but I do my part. I've got this paper shuffled down to an art. So take a number and avail yourself of our plush accommodations. Just 'cause I look at you like you're a worthless waste of protoplasm, like you're a shiftless, no-account leech on the system, that doesn't mean you have to act rude. You can't get what you want except through me, and I can make it as hard as you want it to be. You better dot those I's and cross those T's, or I'll send you to the back of the line. Just change your attitude, son. You'll find that red tape can be fun. There, now we're finished. You can be on your way. Oh, and by the way, have a nice day.
Here's another old guitar story. I'm John Boyer and Jayme Hood from the Hammer and the Hatchet. We're here. When I was in high school, I started playing in a band with a guy named Brand Smith, and it was it was a punk rock band, you know. And Brand had his own house because he was older than me. I think he was already graduated high school. And so there's like 3 or 4 bands that practiced at this one house. It was like the jam house. But Brand worked the trash route in Anderson and brought back one day an old beat-up Gibson guitar that he pulled out of the trash. And at that time, it had its original finish, and it was just really beat up. But it was an old, like, tobacco sunburst Gibson hollow body guitar. Missing parts and pieces, but it was still playable. They strung it up, and and everybody kind of passed the guitar around, thought it was awesome. And I was like, at that point in time, I was like, if you ever get rid of this guitar, I want it, And of course, years go by, that guitar was thrown into the corner. It was just kind of like the jam house guitar. People kind of noodled on it, maybe hashed out some song ideas on it here and there. Somewhere in there, Brand, I think, got the great idea to spray paint the top of it black, which wouldn't be so bad if it was smooth and fine, but that old guitar looked like somebody used a piece of gravel as a pick, so there's a lot of gouges and all that now has flat black spray paint all inside all these cracks and crevices in this wood, so it's terrible. So...
And covered it in stickers.
Well, that happens later. Well, it wasn't sold to me like I asked. It was sold to another buddy that incidentally rehearsed and practiced over there. Brand played, I don't know, drums in that band. He played bass for me, and it was good times back then. But anyway, so he sold it to my buddy Mark, and Mark was the one. He's a big IRL, IndyCar fan and racing fan, so he covered it in all kind of racing stickers. And so you can imagine this guitar got turned into this incredibly cool looking rockabilly guitar with black and racing stickers all over
Mud
it.
Flap Girl
And everything, the whole 9 yards. Well, out of the blue, years later, I get a call, and it's my buddy. He's like, "Hey, I had this old Gibson. I kind of need some money. You know, $250 and it's yours. I said, sold. I'll come get it. So drove all the way to Anderson. I think I lived in Indy at the time. Picked it up. It was not playable at the time. It had finally fallen into such
Tuning key was
disrepair.
broken, fret markers missing.
Yeah,
all sorts
the
of problems.
top was cracked. I mean,
cracked.
you couldn't put strings on it. So that was another guitar that I was just like had around, but it was that was like a sentimental piece to me, you know, because that was like a symbol of my youth and my rock and roll punk rock days, you know. So, but I always kind of had it in my head that I wanted to restore it someday. So then enters Jayme. I met her, and she introduced me to her friend Dan Kearns, and then Dan was the one that did the 1920 Stella, redid that for me. He did it for free just because he loved it and transformed that guitar from just complete disarray to one of the most beautiful sounding guitars I've ever heard. So I obviously was like, take this Gibson, see what you can do with it, you know. And he didn't have it a month.
Oh, no, it was just a couple of weeks. He was really excited about that project because all it was a refin and a fret marker and a tuner key. It was not a blown apart guitar. This was something he could actually really work on quickly.
But he had to take it all the way back down the bare wood, and he sanded it and got all the gouges and scrapes out of it because he had to, because all that black spray paint was in every crack and crevice. It was not ever going to come out. It was either going to be a black spray painted guitar. And I was like, man, let's see if we can get it original. So he did it. He took it all the way down to the wood. And what's really special about that is he recreated a really authentic Gibson sunburst finish. I mean, it is remarkable. The only difference is he probably had a little bit too much clear coat, so it's brighter. But to me, it's a beautiful guitar. He did just an incredible job on that guitar. And it plays and sounds great. And there's some missing fret markers that he used. What was it? He used bone from.
It was Elkhorn.
Elkhorn.
He took Elkhorn and carved out and so
used that Elkhorn binding in places that it was missing. You know, instead of like getting binding from someplace, well, you couldn't get that like old matched yellow age look, so he just used.
So it's just intentionally unmatched.
Yeah, but
and looks
bone.
great. Looks great.
Corn.
Sounds great. We love playing it.
And then he made a leather pickguard for it.
That's
too.
right.
Which is pretty unique.
We get a lot of questions about that pickguard.
But it plays beautifully, and I'm very fortunate to have that guitar. It's a symbol of my youth, and I was able to take that guitar, and by way of Jayme and her friend Daniel, we all got together and brought that guitar back to, beautiful glory, and it'll be around for a lot of years now.
That's right.
This is John and Jayme from the Hammer Hatchet, and that's a old guitar story.
Down along the old hedgerow past the firehouse is where we'd go. We'd meet there in the twilight glow and contemplate the universe. One summer night with the chill in the air, you confessed to me your worldly cares, your passion for a certain bow, his wandering eyes, your lifelong curse. Fireflies flickered and the moonlight fell upon your brow, but I could tell that the time wasn't right to let you know how I loved you so. Later that night there was a big scare. Firehouse sirens pierced the air and you jumped in fright and fell over on me, held on tight and then broke free. And the next day I saw that certain bow tightly in his sway, and I wondered, should I let you know? I wondered if you'd turn my way. So many occasions since that day I've thought about how I might say those words imprisoned in my heart. I never found a way. Now I stand here at your grave. I bare my soul, but it's too late. The wind, it echoes back my plea. I've none but God to comfort me. Down along the old hedgerow, past the firehouse is where we'd go. We'd meet there in the twilight glow, contemplate the universe. That hedgerow stands there to this day. It reminds me of your moonlit face, of my reticent heart and fearful soul, of how I never told. I never told you.
Now we pause for station identification.
You are listening to the Brown County Hour on volunteer-powered community radio, WFHB, at 100.7 in Brown County, 91.3 and 98.1 in Bloomington, 106.3 in Ellettsville, and online at wfhb.org.
Support for the Brown County Hour comes from the Indiana State Fingerstyle Guitar Festival at the Brown County Playhouse, featuring award-winning acoustic guitarists from all over the world on July 28th and 29th. Tickets and information available at indianastringfest.com.
Our final segment begins with a poem from Nancy Chen Long called The Artist's Wife. Mike Bubie shares a tale about false teeth. Dave Seastrom has an essay about trash in Brown County. And we'll close the show with Lou Stant's song, Lake Pontchartrain, from his album, A Rambler's Soul.
Nancy Chen Long, on seeing the Embroiderer or met Gauguin. After the divorce, I took a class in art appreciation to occupy my head. We studied Gauguin. While everyone else was taken in by his use of color and image after image of nude Tahitian beauties, I couldn't stop staring at his wife Met embroidering. I'd seen it before as a painting of a woman in obedient domesticity. Now she was a wife in situ, posing, while her husband withheld the sun to blot out her face. He rendered her featureless. She became more mask, a quiet interruption in the wallpaper. Instead of needlepoint, I started to imagine that she would have wanted to leave, stroll down the banks of the Seine, smolder along the soot-like evening, reclaiming that textured glow some of us feel as we fall under the whitewash of summer. I scarcely glanced at the other paintings, those fine features of Tiamana, the Tahitian who became at 14 mother of Gauguin's youngest son, whom he named Emile, after his oldest son Emile, who lived in France with Met. The day Met learned of his pubescent other bride must have been trauma. The way it is when you learn of a husband's lover, the way it is when a girl comes to your home on a Sunday afternoon in August, while you're standing outside gardening And you think it odd that the dog seems to know her as he trots up the driveway to greet her, and the weight of summer humidity has caused you to be slushed in sweat, and you smile politely as she approaches.
Hi, this is Mike Bubie with the Brown County Hour. This segment of our show is going to be about, excuse me, I have lost my teeth. I beg your pardon, we are in the middle of a radio show. But I have lost my teeth. What do you mean you've lost your teeth? How does a person lose their teeth? Well, you see, I never took real good care of my teeth, and I ended up with false teeth. My teeth, they're like the stars. They come out at night. Did you say this is a radio show? Yes, well, it was until I got interrupted. Tell your listeners to take care of their teeth. Make sure they brush their teeth and get a checkup at the dentist. They don't want to end up in the predicament I'm in. I'd say not, having to look for your teeth. You see, I can't enjoy them fresh fruits and vegetables, the ones you get from the local farmers markets. Did you ever try eating a nice ear of corn with no teeth? Why, it's like gumming a stick of butter. I still don't see how you could lose your teeth, though. Last night, I put them on a stand next to my bed so as I wouldn't swallow them while I was a-sleeping. And when I woke up this morning, they is gone. Maybe you just knocked them off onto the floor or something. No, I've looked everywhere. Now, come to think of it, there was a dollar bill right about where I'd put my teeth. Sounds a bit suspicious to me. No, a dollar bill? Wait a minute, I've got it. The Tooth Fairy. I bet that rascal thought he hit the jackpot when he saw all those teeth sitting there. By golly, I think you're onto something. I know, but he only left me $1. I guess the effects of a poor economy knows no boundaries. Well, so much for the radio show. By the way, what's your name? They call me Mr. Smarty Pants. Mr. Smarty Pants? Why is that? Well, I don't know. My brains ain't in my britches. This is Mike Bubie, and you never know who may show up on the Brown County Hour.
Trash has been an issue in Brown County since the beginning. Before there were laws and regulations mandating what to do with your trash, most folks had their own dump, usually right over the hill or down in the holler. When my first wife and I moved to 3-Story Hill Road in 1977, our 3-acre place came equipped with its own dump. This wasn't something that was in current use because the county had the legal dump over by Railroad Road. Judging from its contents, this dump was something that was in use following World War II and probably saw its final days in the 60s. We had 2 immediate goals for our land. One of them was to somehow get rid of the multiflora rose that overwhelmed the field behind our house, and the other was to clean up the dump at the top of the draw next to that field. Both of these situations were created by human error. The Department of Natural Resources passed out free bundles of multiflora rose to control soil erosion and to create impervious natural fences for livestock. This worked as expected, but no one understood how invasive this plant truly is, and today there are large sections of the county where this plant is completely dominant. The same thing was true for the dump behind our house. I suspect the folks who preceded us assumed that the material they were discarding would just rot away, and eventually the top of this ravine would return to nature. This might have been true before plastics and coated steel cans were developed, but this was no longer the case, and most of the things we found were remarkably intact. In order to get rid of the field of multiflora rose, I began by tearing down an old pigsty that was in the middle of it and burning the unusable wood. After the fire, the ash heap was raked to remove the nails and other metal parts. Then the field was bush-hogged and when that was finished, it was plowed and disked. We spent the next several days raking out the multiflora root clumps, and eventually the pile we made from the roots was also burnt. The field was planted in pasture grass, and after years of repeated mowing, the multiflora rose was mostly contained. Eradicating our little dump became one of my hobbies. It seemed like the more trash we removed, the more trash we uncovered, and for a long while the task seemed endless. I suppose that somewhere in my mind I thought this dump might contain hidden treasure, some forgotten something that had no value at the time it was discarded, but now had immeasurable value. Perhaps a stack of well-preserved ancient baseball cards, or an incredibly valuable old whiskey bottle. Instead, we found endless empty cans of corn and beans and lots of glass jars that had everything imaginable. We also found completely intact early Pampers, whose contents hadn't changed much in the passing years. We had kids in diapers at the time, and this discovery reinforced our choice of staying away from those things. I would back the truck down the hill, getting as close to the draw as I dared. Using a pitchfork or a shovel, and often my own hands, I would fill the truck to the brim. There was no small irony in the fact that I was emptying one dump to take it to another. In my view, the Brown County landfill owned and operated by Pat McGuire was the finest dump I ever had the pleasure to use. Once he got to know you, Pat was a friendly and generous man, but he would bite your head off if you crossed him, and early on I made sure that never happened. He was a World War II Marine of stout stature, and according to more than one older lady that I've spoken with, he was considered to be the most handsome man in the county. His dump consisted of a deep hole at the end of a long lane where the trash was tossed. The first time I was there, I was a little timid about getting too close to the hole. When I protested about backing all the way to the edge, Pat barked out his command, and I obeyed. Over time, we became friends, and I often would return from the dump with at least as much stuff as I'd tossed in the hole. Mind you now, even though the things I was taking home started out as somebody else's trash, they had value to me. As I think back on it, almost everything I took home from the dump eventually found its way back there again. Only this time it wasn't free because I had to pay to use the dump. The day finally came, and the last load of trash was hauled out of our little landfill. We were pleased with the result and looked forward to seeing it return to its natural state. And as you might have already guessed, the first plants that grew there were multiflora rose. This is Dave Seastrom. See you next time.
Been shrimping the Gulf since 33. My daddy, his daddy, and now it's me, dragging our nets on the midnight tide. Pops in the wheelhouse, just the moon as his guide. Always knew where to drop his net. Mounts of pink gold, sparkling and wet. The plan was to pass his gift on to me. Now that dream is gone, floated off to sea. Hard times on Lake Pontchartrain. The shrimp are gone, but we can't complain. We still got each other, but Pop's not the same. Hard times on Lake Pontchartrain. The storm came in as we secured the ship, but the mooring line snapped and cracked like a whip. Our shrimp boat hanging from the poplar tree. Such strange fruits so far, far from the sea. times only conscious train. The family scattered out like so many leaves. Surely made us question all that we believe. Blood is thicker than a surging sea, and soon those leaves came floating back to me. Our time's on the conscious train. The family's moving back so we can't complain. We've got a new ship in Bubie, Belle is her name. Our time's on the conscious train. The family's moving back so we can't complain. We've got a new ship in Bubie, Belle is her name.
Thanks for tuning in to episode 64 of the Brown County Hour, recorded in our studio at the History Center here in downtown Nashville, and brought to you the first Sunday of the month at 9 a.m. and at our new time the following Wednesday at 5:30 p.m.
The Brown County Hour is brought to you by a diverse group of folks who believe now more than ever that the world is for everyone.
This show was produced by
Chuck Wills,
Pam Rader,
Rick Fettig,
Vera Grubbs,
Carrie Ray,
and Dave Seastrom. We would also like to thank Slats Klug for our theme music. You have been listening to the Brown County Hour,
coming to you from deep in the woods of Brown County, Indiana.
celebrating the arts, culture, and nature that make this such a unique community.
Visit us online at browncountyhour.com.
The Brown County Hour is a production of WFHB.
Volunteer-powered, listener-supported community radio for South Central Indiana.
Take me back to my old Brown County home.